Starting with a short rest visit from the 49ers on Thanksgiving Day, the Seahawks are entering a brutal 4-game stretch that certainly will require improvements on both sides of the ball to get victories. Where can they stand to improve the most here in quick order? Rob and I are going to put on our teaching hats here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined for our Tuesday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s out there, whether you're listening in nearby Bremerton or in Lakeland, Minnesota. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Since it's a short week, we are switching things up. It is our Matchup Tuesday special edition. We're actually going to have 2 of these this year with the Seahawks playing again on Thursday night next week. But Matchup Tuesday, a special edition, we'll be diving into all the key matchups and positional battles to watch when the Seahawks and the 49ers tangle on Turkey Day at Lumen Field. This jam-packed episode is brought your way by the Game Time app. Create an account using the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks at 6-4. They are still in the playoff race right now, the number 6 seed in the NFC. But if they want to stay in the hunt in the division as well as the playoffs, they're going to have to find a way to win some tough games coming up. A brutal stretch. We've known about this, Rob, since the schedule came out. 4 games in a row. 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. That is as bad of a gauntlet as any team in the NFL is going to play in a 4-week stretch. And for the Seahawks to have any chance of success, they are going to have to be much better on both sides of the football than what we've seen in recent weeks. And so we're going to put our teaching hats on real quick here, Rob, and put together an improvement plan for the Seattle Seahawks in quick order. How can this football team get the ship righted, get back on track here amid the toughest part of their schedule? Rob, let's start on offense. What's the first thing that stands out to you from a teaching perspective? What would you be instructing Seattle's players and coaches to improve upon here going into this 4-game stretch?
Well, first off, Corbin, as you said, we're putting on a teacher plan here. We're going to try and create an improvement plan. And I think one of the things that just like when you are a student who has to take a test, rather than it being stressful, you got to look at that as an opportunity. This is your opportunity to boost your grade. this is Seahawks' opportunity to boost their record against the best teams in the NFL while also dropping their records. So now here you have the opportunity against the San Francisco 49ers, who obviously the only team that's ahead of you in the division. I think one of the things that you have to do here is you have to acknowledge one of the things that the 49ers are very good at is they have a spectacular tight end. The Seahawks have 3 of them. So take advantage of that fact. Take advantage of the fact that the 49ers have suffered an injury with their strong safety, Talanoa Hufanga, an all-pro, and try to involve them a little bit more. You have some tight ends that can provide some blocking. That would be the number one thing I think the Seahawks need to do is just have a little bit more of a basic plan of how you're going to utilize your tight ends, whether it be as blockers, whether it be as receivers. It feels like right now they're just kind of rolling the dice and making things up as they go rather than have a concrete lesson plan, so to speak, about how you are going to implement some of the most versatile players on your offense.
Yeah, I've been screaming for tight ends for weeks. The other thing the last couple of weeks that I've been screaming for is a less is more approach. I mean, I love the big play as much as anybody. The downfield throws, the 53-yard catch to DK Metcalf the other day was a thing of beauty. But if you're trying to build your offense around that when you still don't have all your starting offensive linemen out there on the field, probably not a good approach. And so to me, in the passing game, it's got to be all about helping your quarterback and your offensive line. Have some shorter, quicker routes that don't take so long to develop. And whether it's Geno Smith or Drew Lock on Thursday, it doesn't matter. You have to have that built in more into your game plan to try to get more yardage on early down passing attempts. Make it, you don't have 3rd and 15 all the time like they did in the second half of this last game. And I think if you do that, it allows you to run the football more, which they haven't been able to do in the second half of a lot of these games because they're getting into rough spots where they're not sustaining drives. You're going to convert more 3rd downs by default with the shorter yardage, and then maybe you can get your tight ends involved. It feels like all these things kind of are interspun together. And if they can get one of these checkpoints addressed, I think you could see a domino effect where some of these other things come into play. Now, on the defensive side of the football, there's maybe not as much to nitpick about because, honestly, they gave up 17 points this last weekend to the Rams. They gave up 30 the first game against Matthew Stafford and company. This defense has been a lot better for the last month and a half to 2 months than they were the first few weeks of the season. And yet, at the same time, you and I both know even A students have areas for improvement. And this defense is not quite to that level.
No, it certainly is not. I think that if you were going to look at this from a defensive standpoint, one of the things that the Seahawks need to do to kind of wrap things up is the very first thing that's listed there for those of you who are watching on YouTube. And thank you as always. But if you're not watching on YouTube, then it says better discipline, penalties, and assignments. And that was one of the things that frankly, I was hoping to talk a little bit more about in yesterday's show. I mean, the Seahawks had 13 penalties, the 5th time in the Pete Carroll era in which they've had at least 130 yards in penalties. And the vast majority of those have been losses. The most penalties the Seahawks have ever had was a loss to the 49ers back in 2018. So the most penalties that any team has ever had was the Seahawks versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers years ago. The Seahawks have unfortunately have had their too many times have been a part of these games in which there's been too many penalties. That is the number one thing that they have to pull out of this football game because the 49ers are significantly more talented than the Los Angeles Rams were. Now, you obviously have an advantage about the fact that this game is going to be played in Lumen Field rather than at SoFi Stadium on the road against the LA Rams. And so just for that factor, then you think that there's more likely to be less penalties called against the Seahawks in this particular game. But that is the number one thing that they have to be able to do is they have to eliminate some of the pass interference, holding calls, certainly the offsides calls. And then I would just jump into the second one there is that when you have the quarterback in your sights, then you have to finish. There can't be 3 quarterback hits for the entire game. There's got to be 3 quarterback hits per series. There's got to be some sacks in this football game. Brock Purdy is a better athlete than Matthew Stafford is. The Seahawks have to hope that he doesn't have the eyes in the back of his head the way Matthew Stafford did a week ago.
Yeah, I got to give Stafford a ton of credit for what he was able to do, getting away from Boye Mafe a couple times, Draymond Jones once. There was another time that Leonard Williams had him lined up, and it just seemed like he was able to make these matrix-like moves, which you wouldn't expect from a guy that isn't an overly athletic aging quarterback, but yet he's got the savvy to do that. Brock Purdy is the better athlete of the two. Does he have the same instincts in that regard? Who knows? But I think that the last thing that really needs to be shored up here, we've talked so much about the missed tackles, but to me, it's about the pursuit from the entire defense. This has been an area that's been very up and down for the Seahawks this year. And against teams like the 49ers that generate a lot of yardage after the catch, they could manufacture plays on screens and quick dump-offs. You have got to be sending droves of tacklers to these guys. And if you have somebody miss, there has to be a couple other guys right there ready to make a play. And I didn't see that against the Rams this last game. I felt like there was a number of times where tackles were missed, and then suddenly there was nobody else in the vicinity. That cannot happen. You have got to have guys flying to the football, whether it's going after the quarterback. If Purdy gets out of the pocket, there better be somebody else ready to try to corral him, whether it's Deebo Samuel, getting to him when he breaks a tackle. You have to limit that damage after the catch. And so to me, swarming is going to be crucial. All the teams they're playing in the next 4 weeks are teams that can create damage after the catch. They can create damage in the run game, breaking tackles, picking up yards after contact. You have to get the guys to the ground, and you've got to have multiple defenders there to be able to help out. If they can do half the things that we just listed here, then the Seahawks really improve their chances of being able to win at least a couple of these games coming up. But if they continue to neglect this entire improvement plan, then, well, we might be looking at some F grades here the next couple of weeks. That's just the way that it plays out. Coming up next, we are going to start diving into the matchups here. Matchup Tuesday on a Thursday night game. Seahawks on offense going up against the 49ers on defense. Don't go away. You're listening to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks, which is brought your way by Game Time. If you've ever been in the hunt for sports or concert tickets at the last minute, the process can be anxiety-provoking, especially around the holidays. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy your tickets for sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And they've got killer deals on last-minute tickets. With their best price guarantee, you could stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. If you want to see the Seahawks battle the 49ers on Thanksgiving night using Game Time's awesome flash deals feature and a detailed stadium map, right now you can get awesome seats for under $80, and it's super easy. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets elsewhere in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDINNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDINNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Life can be full of twists and turns and throw a few wrenches at you when you least expect it, so it's important to show yourself through it all and put a focus on your mental health. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. Therapy worked wonders for me when I was battling depression earlier in my professional career, but don't just take my word for it. Having someone in your corner to guide you when you're struggling to navigate obstacles is invaluable. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online and available to people worldwide. With therapy, it can take a few tries to find the right fit for you, and BetterHelp is a great way to invest in yourself. BetterHelp has a special offer for our listeners. You can get 10% off your first month right now at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're listening to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It's your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each every one of the 12s out there. Thank you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Since we're on a short week, just like the Seahawks are gearing up for Thanksgiving night, we're going to have our keys to victory and picks to click coming up tomorrow on our Wednesday episode. And on Thursday, we will have a game day crossover Thursday edition with the 49ers. So we got a lot of jam-packed episodes coming your way in short order leading up to Thursday's game. You won't want to miss either one of those episodes. Speaking of this Turkey Day game coming up at Lumen Field, Seahawks 49ers. Seahawks going to be sporting their action green uniforms. Some fans rejoice. Some fans start covering their eyes already ahead of the big game. Seahawks on offense going up against the 49ers on defense. It's time for a special edition matchup Tuesday, Rob. And there's so many skill players to talk about in this matchup on both sides of the ball. But I think when we are looking at the Seahawks going up against this 49ers defense, the first, second, and third priority is going to be trying to find a way to keep this defensive line come from completely obliterating Geno Smith, or if it's Drew Lock, whoever's back there, the running backs. This is arguably the best defensive line across the board of the entire NFL, and they only got better by trading for Chase Young. But we know that Nick Bosa is still the ringleader. They've got Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead. Randy Gregory is like a fifth-string guy, and he'd probably start for several teams in this league. So that's the kind of talent and depth that Charles Cross and this offensive line, they're going to have to deal with in this game.
Yeah, you can make an argument that every single one of the matchups that we're going to talk about should really be on Seattle's starting 5 offensive linemen against the 49ers. Just, it's murderous row about the different pass rushers that they have. And instead, we decided to basically kind of squeeze them all into one big group here. I think that really this could be something that Geno Smith, or if it's Drew Lock at the quarterback position, remains to be seen. I do expect it to be Geno Smith, but then he might be, looking up better help here with the end of this football game, just because of the pass rush that the 49ers are able to apply. All of that said, I think that you invested the first round pick in Charles Cross for an opportunity to go against a player like Nick Bosa. You have been sprinkling in play from Jason Peters, Stone Forsythe. Perhaps you even get Abe Lucas back at that right tackle position. We talked about the tight ends a moment ago, Corbin, that should be able to provide some chip blocks on the right tackle position to be able to slow down, whether it be Chase Young, whether it be Cleveland Farrell, whether it be Randy Gregory, whoever the 49ers are going to be throwing at that left defensive end spot, then you have to be able to slow them down. And then, as you mentioned, at the interior of the offensive line, that has to be something that Seattle slows down as well. So this is going to be a game. Again, I expect it to be Geno Smith, that he is going to have to anticipate some pressure off the edge. The 49ers are excellent at that. One of the things I've been very much encouraged by, I feel like a lot of people have not given Geno Smith enough credit for, is his ability to feel the pressure coming up, is his ability to step up into the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and throw the football there. That's where I think that Seattle has some playmakers out there that they frankly have to take better advantage of, because again, when you are willing to invest the early draft picks that the Seahawks have, especially at the wide receiver position, then give them their opportunities in a game like such as this one.
How can you help your offensive line and your quarterback when you're facing a murderer's row? Get the quick passing game going and get the tight ends involved. I feel like we've talked about this already on this show, but you look at San Francisco's defense, and you mentioned this earlier. Hufanga, who's one of the best safeties in the NFL, was an all-pro selection last year, plays a lot like Troy Polamalu, not just because they came from the same school, just similar playing style, always running with his hair on fire, picks off a lot of passes, a great blitzer. Well, he tore his ACL this last weekend against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So his season is over. And that means that the 49ers are going to be sending a rookie, a mid-round rookie in Jair Brown to replace him. And I just look at this matchup with the priority on getting the football out quickly, which the Seahawks, at least they should be prioritizing that so they can protect their quarterback against this incredibly talented defensive line. But this is a game that just screams, get Colby Parkinson involved, get Noah Fant involved, get Will Dissly involved. And Will Dissly, if they throw to you, catch the football, which he's usually been very good about that. But these tight ends going up against Brown, as well as Tayshaun Gibson, who's a solid veteran, but he's getting to be an older player. He's given up some big plays this season in the passing game. You can take advantage of those safeties without Hufanga out there. I just feel like this is a game where if you're going to get the tight ends involved, this has to be the game to do it, to try to open up the rest of your offense. Because if you come into this game thinking we're just going to air it out downfield, Geno Smith might not make it through the entire game. Drew Lock might not make it through the entire game. The tight ends getting involved in the passing game should be a priority because of this injury and the depth issues that the 49ers now have at that safety position.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that the 49ers, there's a lot of Seahawks fans out there who don't watch as much tape as you and I do, Corbin. They might be thinking about the 49ers and the fact that they had a nice little losing streak. I say nice from a Seattle perspective, a 3-game losing streak. They went into their bye. They got a little bit healthier. They have actually rattled off a couple of very impressive victories the last couple of games against Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that there is a possibility the 49ers come into this Thanksgiving game, this Thanksgiving Day game, almost like they ate a little bit of turkey and a little bit of melatonin. They might be a little bit sleepy, a little bit fat and happy about where they are in the standings, whereas the Seahawks might be coming into this game almost feeling like the kids sitting at the kid table that, didn't get that extra slice of pumpkin pie. They're going to be a little bit angry and a little bit wanting some revenge. And I think that this is the opportunity to do so. And I think that that is exactly the type of mentality the Seahawks have to kind of impress upon not only their tight ends, not only their offensive line, but the wide receivers specifically. And I would point to DK Metcalf in this game, who has had some matchups against Charvarius Ward, the 49ers' best cornerback. And I don't want to throw any disrespect to Charvarius Ward. He's one of my absolute favorite players in all of the NFL. NFL. This is a very physical, very athletic player, but so can DK Metcalf be that type of a player. So to me, that is an interesting one. I think the Seahawks have to try to get DK very much involved in this football game, get that competitive spirit out of him. I think Tyler Lockett has an opportunity to have a big game against Ambry Thomas, a Michigan cornerback who was selected a couple of years ago, also a very good football player who can run with Tyler Lockett, but who can really run and change directions with the savvy that Tyler Lockett can. This is your opportunity again. You spent a first-round pick on Jackson Smith and Jigba. The 49ers used their selection on Diamador Lenore, a good player from Oregon, but still he doesn't have the playmaking chops that Jackson Smith and Jigba has. There are some opportunities, and the Seahawks have to be able to protect at the line of scrimmage. They have to be able to get their tight ends involved. But if the Seahawks are going to win this football game, I really believe that they're going to have to show some boldness, some aggression, and be able to get their playmaking wide receivers get going. I think if they have a chance to do so, surprise some people, especially, again, if they can get their wide receivers creating some big plays in this football game.
I really like the Smith and Jigba versus Lenore matchup, and that's not knocking on Lenore. He's played really well against the Seahawks in the past, including last year having 2 really good games. But he is a smaller corner, even by slot corner standards. Jackson Smith and Jigba's got good size. He's able to break tackles. This should be a matchup, in theory, that the Seahawks can take advantage of. But as you mentioned, all this goes back to that first matchup. Does Geno Smith have enough time to get the ball to his wide receivers? I like some of the matchups they have out there, but they are going to have to pick and choose when they take those shots. And they have to set up those opportunities with the run game and some of the short passing game, getting those tight ends involved. We'll see if Shane Waldron is able to dial that up on Thursday night and put the Seahawks in a position to win this football game. Switching gears, up next, we are going to continue Matchup Tuesday. The Seahawks on defense against Brock Purdy and the 49ers potent offense. Don't go away. You're listening to our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks, which is brought your way by FanDuel. Get ready for Week 12 in the NFL with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, such as spreads, the Seahawks being a 7-point underdog at home against the 49ers on Thanksgiving. Player props, Devin Witherspoon currently having the second best odds for Defensive Rookie of the Year, over-unders, and much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and enjoy the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. You're listening to Matchup Tuesday here on the Locked On Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to all the 12s out there. Thank you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Tomorrow, we will have a rare Wednesday Picks to Click and Keys to Victory podcast. On game day Thursday, we'll also have a crossover Thursday edition with the Locked On 49ers crew coming your way. 2 awesome episodes. Make sure that you are staying tuned to listen to both of those coming up here leading up to Thursday night's Turkey Day game. Continuing our Matchup Tuesday, we just looked at the Seahawks on offense against the 49ers on defense, and now we're going to flip the script. And again, there's a lot of really fun skill players on both sides of the ball to talk about, and we're going to get to that. But I want to start with the first matchup here being in the trenches because the 49ers have a future Hall of Famer at left tackle in Trent Williams. And this is the game where I really want to see that Boye Mafe has arrived. We believe that he has. He's coming off a game that he didn't have the stat line that we've seen from him. But if you want to really show that you have emerged as one of the best young pass rushers and run defenders off the edge in the NFL, do it against Trent Williams. If you can do it against Trent Williams in this game and help slow down this 49ers offense, then I think the Seahawks have a much better chance to win this football game. I'm looking at Mafe. I'm looking at Derek Hall. Hey, rookie, show me what you got in this big stakes game. Draymond Jones playing off the edge. Frank Clark, you haven't done much since you've been re-signed. Can you get some of that juice going at Lumen Field? That edge rushing group going up against the tackle, specifically Trent Williams, that is a matchup I'm watching to see. Can they create some pressure on Brock Purdy and make him uncomfortable, something they couldn't do in their matchups last year?
Yeah, and I didn't mean to make a joke about our sponsor and a very serious mental health advocate and better help. But I think that the same kind of a joke applies here, frankly, in that I worry about the Seahawks being able to go up against Trent Williams. Trent Williams has been one of the most dominant offensive linemen I've ever seen. I've been doing this for 24 years now. He's absolutely spectacular. I hope that Boye Mafe is able to rebound off of a disappointing performance against the LA Rams. And we could go. I think the fact that he is at home in Lumen Field and that crowd, that he should be able to be at least a little bit more productive than he was. But frankly, I'm looking on the other side of the ball. And I say frankly because I'm looking at Frank Clark to be able to provide some of that veteran leadership. I'm looking at a guy like a Derek Hall, and specifically looking at the $55 million man that is Draymond Jones to get himself involved. He's going up against the right tackle and Colt McKivitz, who's a good player, but he is certainly not a caliber of a player for Trent Williams. So this is, to me, the game that Draymond Jones, and frankly, I'll jump in a little bit more about Seattle's entire defensive line. We talked about San Francisco's entire defensive line. This is the game that you trade for Leonard Williams for. This is a game. Spencer Burford is the 49ers offensive lineman that has the most holding and false start penalties for the 49ers. That is something that you have to take advantage of. Their center, Jake Brendel, he's a good player. He's not a dominant player. So Jaron Reed has had moments where he's been absolutely dominant this season. This is the game in which not only a guy like Boye Mafe, who no question about it has been Seattle's best pass rusher so far this season, but I think it's time for Boye Mafe not to have to carry the entire load, that the rest of Seattle's defensive lineman gets involved as well.
Yeah, and I think if they're able to do that, that it's going to put a lot more pressure, not just literally, but it's going to put the pressure on Brock Purdy that a lot of teams have not been able to apply. Now, when they lost 3 games in a row, this offense was not humming quite as well. And part of the reason was because the offensive line and Trent Williams was missing for a good chunk of that. That certainly was a big factor. But this has been a line that at times has not been quite as good as what we've seen from predecessors. They lost some key players, Mike McGlinchey being one of them that left in free agency. So this can be an area, if the Seahawks defensive line plays to their potential and their depth shows up, that they can take advantage of. If it doesn't happen, though, we know the talent the 49ers have on the outside. And really, we talk about every week, the get your popcorn ready matchup. Last week, we were talking Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going up against this secondary. In this game, you've got Brandon Ayuk, who has really turned into a star for the 49ers. You've got Deebo Samuel, who we know already is a star with his ability to create after the catch. And I look at this game, I think there's a secondary storyline here that is worth noting with this matchup. Ayuk already has almost 850 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns this year. Reek Woolen now has 2 interceptions. He's starting to play better. If you remember that playoff game in January, though, that was easily Reek Woolen's worst game as a pro. Brandon Ayuk was running him in circles. Brandon Ayuk is not a better athlete than what Reek Woolen is, but for whatever reason in that game, he was getting separation every route. You have to believe that Reek Woolen has that in the back of his mind, thinking, I got to get payback in this game. So I'm really excited to see those two against each other. And Deebo Samuel against Devin Witherspoon. You want to talk about 2 bullheaded dudes going up against each other? That one is going to be a really fun physical matchup. High energy guys that love to play the game. So this is really a matchup that could sway who wins this game. If the Seahawks secondary can do a good job of containing these receivers and most importantly, limiting them after the catch, that is San Francisco's greatest strength. If you can do that, your safeties can get the job done against George Kittle, then I think that the Seahawks can definitely win this game. But as we've seen in the past, that is easier said than done because the 49ers have a bunch of studs on the outside.
Oh, they certainly do. I mean, the 49ers are a very, very talented and very well-coached team. But, yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that this is the most exciting matchup just from a fan perspective, just to kind of watch these guys all kind of duke it out. I mean, the Seahawks selected Devin Witherspoon in large part, number 5 overall, in large part because they wanted to see him go up against a guy like Deebo Samuel, who is just his physicality, his instincts, his toughness. It's basically our best guy against your best guy. And that's really what sports is all about. And I love that you mentioned Reek Woolen and getting burned. And I will say it just as you did. Reek Woolen got burned by Brandon Ayuk in that playoff loss. And so mention as many times as you want. I think that Pete Carroll should basically get himself a plane and kind of fly something all over the VMAC that Brandon Ayuk burned Rick Woolen in that playoff game, just to remind him to kind of stoke that fire a little bit. Because as you mentioned, probably Brandon Ayuk is an absolutely fantastic athlete. He is a 4.3 guy all day long. But Seattle's guy, Rick Woolen, is a 4.2 guy, and he's a taller guy, and he's a guy that has ball skills as well. So, again, and then, oh, by the way, Trey Brown on the opposite side has continually put up big plays. So, again, if the Seahawks are able to provide any type of pressure on Brock Purdy, he has shown a willingness to trust his guys downfield. They've earned it. But the Seahawks defensive backs have earned their reputation as far as playmakers as well. You want to flip this game around, get yourself a pick six and see how the 49ers respond to it.
And I think the other matchup that we have to touch on here, Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, and the 49ers have other capable running backs, but you look at the numbers McCaffrey has put up this year. He leads the league with 825 rushing yards. He has 364 receiving yards, 14 total touchdowns. He has been a dominant force. If a non-QB is going to be in the discussion for MVP, right now Christian McCaffrey is absolutely in that discussion with what he is doing as an all-around package out of the backfield. The onus is going to fall on Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. The safeties can be included in this discussion as well. I anticipate that we will see Julian Love if Jamal Adams is back for this game. I'm assuming that those guys will get some reps against McCaffrey in coverage. You might even see Devin Witherspoon against him some because they move him around. But the linebackers are going to get stressed in this game. You know that Kyle Shanahan is going to try to set up that matchup to get McCaffrey against Jordan Brooks or Bobby Wagner. And it is on those guys to do a better job. And they did this last week against the Rams, where they gave up several big plays in the passing game. And I thought the run defense was fine, but Brooks in particular getting off blocks on screens, he struggled with that this last game. He has to do a better job. Both these guys, whether it's defending the run, getting downhill, getting to McCaffrey, bringing him down, whether it's covering him, there's going to be a lot of stress put on both these linebackers. They have to bring their A game for the Seahawks to have a chance to win this one.
Yeah, and we're kind of remiss, in mentioning Christian McCaffrey as the third matchup here. I mean, it really could be the very first matchup that we mentioned. We should have even switched it and just had San Francisco's offense against Seattle's defense to lead off the show, because really this does come down to the legitimate MVP candidate that is Christian McCaffrey. 14 touchdowns says it all. I mean, it's something I mentioned in yesterday's show, Corbin, the Seahawks in 10 games so far this season have scored 9 total touchdowns in the second half. Of all of those 10 football games, Christian McCaffrey has 14 scores. I mean, that just says it all right there. I mean, the man is a phenomenal player. Give the Carolina Panthers credit for drafting him where they did and just kind of eschewing what everybody else says about, oh, you can't take running backs early. And then the 49ers give them credit for making the gutsy trade to bring him in to turn a good team into a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. If the Seahawks have any chance of pulling off this upset, and again, they are 7-point underdogs at home, then they have to be able to slow down Christian McCaffrey. I've used the expression before. He is public enemy number 1, number 2, number 3. He is absolutely all of that. If the Seahawks have any chance of winning this football game, they have to slow down Christian McCaffrey.
All you need to know about the talent with the 49ers, I briefly name-dropped George Kittle, and he still terrifies me going into this game. But that's how much talent that this team has. You have to worry about McCaffrey. You got to worry about Samuel. You got to worry about Ayuk. Kyle Juszczyk, fullback. You got to worry about him sneaking out. I mean, this team is loaded. They are very well coached. So the fact that I didn't mention Kittle up to this point, that just tells you all you need to know, because he's still one of the best tight ends in the NFL and has killed the Seahawks over the years. So that easily could have been a matchup, and it just didn't make the top 3 because the 49ers have so much talent on that side of the football. As always, you can follow me on Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Rang. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and subscribe, or wherever you listen to your podcast, to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Tomorrow, we will have a rare Wednesday Keys to Victory episode, picks to click, game predictions, and much more. You won't want to miss it. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.